Hello, and welcome to another edition of Watching Washington, a public affairs program brought to you by the Brian Lamb School of Communication. It's Friday, November 15th, and I am Bella Hecker.
And I'm Will Courtney. Here's a look at what's happened this week. First, let's check out President Biden and President-elect Donald Trump's meeting at the White House on Wednesday.
President Joe Biden and now President-elect Donald Trump met Wednesday afternoon to begin discussing the administration's transition. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said in a press release following the meeting that the meeting was both cordial and substantive, discussing matters of national security and domestic policy issues. Jean-Pierre said they spoke for nearly 2 hours. This is what the two presidents told the media Wednesday afternoon.
Mr. President-elect and former President,
Thank you very
Donald,
much.
congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And looking forward to having like we said, smooth transition. Do everything we can to make sure you're accommodated, what you need. And we're going to get a chance to talk about some of that today. So
Good.
welcome
Thank you
back.
very much. And thank you very much. And politics is tough, and it's in many cases not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much. A transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that, Jim.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
As of the time of the broadcast, President Biden has just 66 days left in office until Trump is sworn in as the 47th president.
Senator John Thune was elected as the Senate Majority Leader on Wednesday, according to The Hill. The South Dakota senator will be replacing Kentucky Senator Mitch McConnell, who served as the Senate GOP leader for the past 18 years. Thune had been serving in the number 2 position of the Senate GOP leadership since 2019. Thune's main competition came from Texas Senator John Cornyn and Florida Senator Rick Scott. According to NBC News, Thune led after the first round of voting with 23 votes to Cornyn's 15 and Scott's 13, which resulted in Scott being eliminated from the race. Thune ended up winning by a vote of 29 to Cornyn's 24. Following his victory, Thune addressed the public.
We have a mandate from the American people, a mandate not only to clean up the mess left by the Biden-Harris-Schumer agenda, but also to deliver on President Trump's priorities.
Speaking of delivering according to Trump's priorities, Donald Trump is acting fast on building his team of cabinet members and key advisors as he soon approaches the start of his second term in office. His team will include, as we knew, Vice President-elect J.D. Vance, while the rest of his cabinet and high-ranking nominees require Senate confirmation. Here's how his administration is currently taking shape. Trump first appointed Susie Wiles to be the first woman to serve as the White House Chief of Staff, as she previously served as Trump's co-campaign manager. Trump is expected to name Stephen Miller as the White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, a role where Miller will write and implement the administration's immigration agenda. For White House counsel, Trump appointed Bill McGinley, and he will legally advise Trump in office regarding ethics, oversight, and judicial nominations. Trump spoke of his plans to nominate a Fox News host, Pete Hegseth, as his Secretary of Defense, as he has an impressive background, having served in the National Guard and was awarded 2 Bronze Stars and a Combat Infantryman badge. Most recently, Trump nominated Matt Gaetz as his Attorney General, and Trump stated he relies on Gaetz to reform the Department of Justice. Additionally, Trump plans to nominate and already has nominated many more, as he describes fierce loyalists to his cabinet. The governor of South Dakota, Kristi Noem, as Department of Homeland Security. John Ratcliffe for Central Intelligence Agency Director. Marco Rubio as the Secretary of State. Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence. Mike Waltz as National Security Advisor. Tom Homan for Border Czar. Mike Huckabee for U.S. Ambassador to Israel. Elise Stefanik as the UN Ambassador, and finally, former Republican gubernatorial candidate of New York, Lee Zeldin, as the EPA Administrator. With a list like this, Donald Trump will be backed by many intelligent and experienced individuals. We will begin to see confirmation as the Senate makes their decisions.
President-elect Donald Trump announced Tuesday that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy will lead a new department in his second administration. Trump says the two billionaires will head the Department of Government Efficiency, which he claims will, quote, revolutionize how government functions. In a statement, Trump says the purpose of the department is to, quote, dismantle government bureaucracy, slash excess regulations, cut wasteful expenditures, and restructure federal agencies from top to bottom. Trump added he chose Musk and Ramaswamy for their business acumen and track record in, quote, shaping industries and pushing innovation, stating that these are the men who can get it done. The statement also quoted Musk as saying that this will send shockwaves through the system and anyone involved in government waste, which is a lot of people, should watch out. And that's from Elon Musk. Ramaswamy also commented, saying, quote, the days of red tape and government gridlock are numbered. We're here to make the federal government work for the American people again, end quote.
Tensions are rising in Amsterdam following violent incidents linked to the Israeli-Palestine conflict. Last week, Israeli soccer fans attending a soccer match between the Ajax Amsterdam and Maccabi Tel Aviv were attacked in what officials have described as the anti-Semitic hate crimes. On Monday, a tram was set on fire, windows were smashed, and police officers were pelted with stones. Later that day, a passing cyclist was pulled from his bike and attacked, receiving heavy blows to his head, police said, adding that the suspect was detained while other rioters threw stones at the officers. Several were injured, sparking widespread condemnation, including statements from Amsterdam's mayor Femke Halsema and Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof. In response, pro-Palestinian protests erupted in Dam Square, despite a citywide ban on demonstrations due to safety concerns. The protests turned confrontational, leading to clashes with police and multiple arrests. Public unrest continues as allegations of excessive force by the police are now under investigation and political tensions are high.
A man who worked for the United States government has been arrested in connection with the leaking of classified U.S. intel. Asif William Rahman, who was apprehended by FBI earlier this week in Cambodia. Earlier last week, a court in Virginia indicted him on 2 counts of willful transmission of national defense information. Officials have said that Rahman has a, quote, a top-secret security clearance that gave him access to sensitive, compartmented information. The documents, which contain information regarding Israel's plans for launching a response attack against Iran after the ballistic missile attack on October 1st. Israel carried out this attack on multiple Iranian sites in late October.
Up next, President-elect Donald Trump's plans for the Department of Education, as well as updates regarding his court case.
Plus, we take a closer look at the suspension of flights to Haiti, as well as the ongoing wildfires in California. Stay with us. More Watching Washington next.
The program allows students to finish their bachelor's degree and also get an online master's degree that overlap during their last year at Purdue.
Students can more quickly work towards a graduate degree while concurrently starting their professional careers.
The online program allows them to kind of go at their own pace, and so they're not having to abide by the academic calendar.
And our goal is that this would make you even more compelling for your next opportunity in the workforce.
As President-elect Donald Trump announces some of his picks for top administrative jobs, one he's been quiet on is Education Secretary. This could be due to his campaign pledge to scrap the department entirely. The Department of Education handles federal money funding to states and schools and implementing and overseeing educational regulations, among other responsibilities. In 1979, then President Jimmy Carter, a Democratic from Georgia, signed legislation making the Department of Education a cabinet-level agency, fulfilling a campaign pledge he made to one of the country's largest teacher unions, the National Education Association. Previously, federal education programs were housed in other agencies. Trump has not yet said exactly what he would want to do to shut the department down, which would require an act of Congress, or what would happen to federally fund education programs if he did. Ending the department may not eliminate federal education funding. However, as many funding programs predate the Department of Education, we'll keep you updated as Trump and Congress continue to decide what will become of the department.
We have another developing story involving special counsel Jack Smith, who is reportedly considering stepping down from his position before President-elect Trump takes office. Smith has been at the center of high-profile investigations leading to several federal charges against Trump for his attempts to overturn the 2020 election and his handling of classified documents. Trump, who has denied all charges, has previously stated that he would swiftly dismiss Smith if he returned to the Oval Office, which could potentially put an end to the ongoing cases. As sources familiar with the matter reveal, Smith is working to finalize a comprehensive report on his investigations before Trump's anticipated return to the White House. The report would need approval from Attorney General Merrick Garland, who would also decide if any part of it would be public. With Trump's inauguration approaching, there's growing interest in how these legal matters will develop.
In a recent court filing, the U.S. Department of Justice says its prosecutors need more time to decide on the next steps following Trump's re-election. According to the department policy, a sitting president cannot be prosecuted. This update comes as the Justice Department and special counsel Jack Smith discuss how to wind down two cases involving Trump, one on classified documents and another related to possible election interference in 2020. Smith has requested that a federal judge remove upcoming deadlines on the election interference case to give his team time to plan the next moves. Prosecutors expect to report back to the court with a decision by December 2nd.
The Federal Aviation Administration has grounded all flights to Haiti for 30 days. According to CNN, 3 jets from U.S.-based airlines were struck by bullets while flying over Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince, amid escalating gang violence. American Airlines say it found a bullet hole in Flight 819 from Louverture International Airport in Port-au-Prince after it landed in Miami on Monday. A Spirit Airlines plane was also hit by gunfire while attempting to land in Port-au-Prince on Monday as well. It resulted in what the airline described as, quote, minor injuries to one crew member. Later, JetBlue said in a post-flight inspection in New York that they found damage from a bullet on one of its planes returning again from Haiti. Haitian authorities have already suspended flights in and out of Port-au-Prince for a week.
Firefighters are battling to contain wildfires on both coasts of the United States. Crews in New York and New Jersey continue to battle a deadly fire fueled by historic drought, while in Southern California there are worries that the strong winds could return and fan an already destructive fire. Thousands of acres near New York and New Jersey border have been burned by the Jennings Creek fire, which also led to the death of an 18-year-old New York State Forest Ranger volunteer. The New Jersey Forest Fire Service saying it has responded to 537 wildfires as of Sunday. That's nearly 500 more than in the same period last year. Across the country in Southern California, the mountain fire has burned more than 20,000 acres and destroyed more than 170 structures. The cause of the mountain fire in California remains under investigation, while with officials looking into whether power lines may have contributed.
Our in-studio guest this week comes from Purdue's American Presidency course.
We will discuss the next steps for our country heading into Donald Trump's second term as President of the United States. The full interview just ahead on Watching Washington.
Football. It's the best time of the year. You know what else is great? The world's largest and fastest mascot. You can't have Purdue football without the trains. Look for the Reamer Club outside Stewart Center, 12 to 5 p.m. on Fridays before home football games, for your chance to ride the Boilermaker Special for free. See you then.
We have special guests with us in the studio this week.
Students from the American Presidency class are here to discuss what the future holds for the country under President-elect Donald Trump's leadership.
Thank you. That's right. I've got students from Dr. Catherine Brownell's American Presidency course with me today to discuss what history we'll remember from the 2024 election. Thanks for being here. My first question is, what do you think history books are going to say about the 2024 election? and what do you think was unique about this election?
Yeah, great question. I think looking back at the 2024 election, it's definitely going to be noted as an era of intense political divisiveness, and it's also noteworthy to mention the role of social media and how it has affected the Court of Public Appeals heading up to this election and even after. And I think that looking to the past, like political divisiveness is nothing new, but it seems almost at a heightened point right now, and it's sort of brought up into flames with social media and all that force that comes with it.
Yeah. Just to add to that, I think that this election will kind of go down in history as being, if not one of a kind, most definitely the first of its kind. I don't think I've ever heard of an instance throughout history where a major party, in the United States, switches candidates midway through the race. I've heard of candidates dropping out the race, but as high profile as Biden did back in July, I don't think, we've ever seen anything like that before. So I think that'll just go down in history as being, something that was the first of its kind and very remarkable for that reason.
I think it's going on what both of you said. I think this election was really interesting because of how the dynamics were. You saw a point where Harris was up 5 or 6%, and then Trump was up 5 or 6%, and it was kind of like cats and dogs versus each other for like 2 or 3 months, and like it came and flew by quick. The primary season felt so long looking back with DeSantis, Haley, and Trump, and then once we turned the corner after President Biden dropped out, you just saw how quickly everything evolved, and after that happened, it was like, wow, it's election night, and we already have some of the results at 2 a.m.
Right.
And that was kind of a shock that we had results that quickly. And it was over President-elect Trump, and it felt like it just flew by quick.
Yeah, I think what you both said with social media, it's definitely, we're going to be seeing that this is like a first of its kind election and probably pretty common trends that we may see in the future. So what past presidential elections do you feel like, or have had a complete control of both the legislative and the executive branches? And how did that really work out for those elections and those presidents?
Yeah, so looking back at the era of FDR under his the New Deal, he had total control of, or his party had total control of both the House and the Senate at the time, which allowed for major progressive legislation to pass through regarding housing and just bolstering the American economy. So it is very beneficial for that, although it's not always going to stay like that when it comes down to midterm elections. The public may have sort of some discrepancies, or there may be an issue in that case of overfunding from the federal government. It's all going to come back down to those midterm elections, as those majorities tend to get a little more towards the other side, but it's definitely not something unprecedented.
Kind of in the same vein. I think the 60s was a great example of, a time when the government was, heavily run by the Democrats. The 60s, part of what made civil rights legislation at that time get passed so quickly was, obviously the political prowess of LBJ, but part of what made that easy for him to do was the fact that he was working with other Democrats. Leveraging his power as, with his time being in the Senate, knowing how to really work the system. And I think when you have a legislative body that is united through party lines on both sides of in both chambers of Congress, I think it's very easy for legislative agendas to go through with very little resistance. Not saying that there won't be any resistance, and not saying that every GOP member will vote the same way for the next 4 years, but I think we're very hard pressed to assume that President-elect Trump is going to face substantial backlash from his own party with trying to get these initiatives passed when the Republicans have just taken over the House and the Senate.
Okay.
Which, going on to that, I would like to take us back to 2016 for a second. Trump won. The Republicans had the House, the Senate. Obviously, they failed to repeal Obamacare. He did not get the border. He got some funding, but he did not get, the border wall fully up. So we'll kind of see what happens this time because there was a slim majority in the House, and again, the Senate's a 3 majority now for Republicans. But we'll see, can Trump actually get some of these big things done that he promised his base, or is there going to be some holdbacks in the Senate because there's only a 53-seat majority? And I feel like looking back from 2016 when there was 51-seat majority to 53-seat majority, will those extra 2 seats help him to push his agenda forward for some of his more big things like border wall and things like that? So I think that's going to be the real thing that we'll have to look and see what he actually does within the next year or two before the midterms, when it likely flips back to Democrats in control.
Yeah, like you said 8 years ago, there was a lot of, agendas that he wanted to get pushed that there was a little bit of pushback about. So do you think this election it's going to be different? Do you think this term he's going to have an easier time passing his agendas? Or do you think there's still going to be some of those same obstacles or maybe even more difficult obstacles?
I think there's always going to be obstacles. It's just the nature, and it's a blessing and a curse of our federal government and how it was set up. Even with a complete majority in the House, looking at the Senate, the filibuster still exists, which has been a tool used to either delay or sometimes completely halt pieces of legislation. And even when it comes to inter-party turmoil, that is also a big factor when it comes to passing this legislation, because not all times people are riding the party lines. Everyone has their own beliefs, although they gotta stick along with the 2-party system that we're delegated to. But there's definitely always some obstacles in the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it's very probable that we'll see a lot of opposition, because I think one thing that we may have not seen before is a little bit more awareness of what President Trump's agenda is. 2016, I think a lot of people were just, kind of enamored by the fact that we had another celebrity president. This man who was for years a TV personality and a businessman is running for president and somehow won. I think that's what was really people were going on, and we're really using a lot of his main agenda points kind of as punchlines when you talk about President Trump, like, oh, he's trying to build a wall and all this stuff, But I think with everything coming out about, with Trump being a lot more vocal about his policies and everything coming out about Project 2025 and stuff like that, I think if he's not going to face pushback from members of Congress and the government, he's probably going to face a lot of pushback from the public, which is going to dictate his approval rating and also his viability for the people that were elected around him in the GOP to remain in office after he leaves. Mm-hmm. So even though this will be his last term, the thing about legislation is that it doesn't just stop where the 4 years ends, because the effects of it are long lasting, especially if the people who help push that legislation through the government are still in the government, because senators and congresspeople, they serve longer than the president. So I think with people being more aware, it's more likely that people will speak out against it more and have more to say. The president is going to have to contend with, a lot of people in the public, not necessarily agreeing with his public stances, as a lot of them didn't when he was running. So,
I think kind of going on what Nation said, that's going to be a big interesting thing because, some of these people, like you said, just got elected. Right. They're at least until 2030, or you take some of them. A lot of them had even voted against Rick Scott, who was kind of his shadow, picketed and endorsed for the Senate Majority Leader. Well, a lot of those people who had voted for Senator John Thune, now the Senate Majority Leader, those people were, kind of more moderates who won in deep red states that didn't share the same policies as Trump. They're still Republicans, but they didn't share the same policies. And those people obviously could give some pushback to him, to President Trump when he takes office, but I feel like we'll just have to see about that. And then going forward, kind of what happens with Trump will dictate if J.D. Vance becomes the front runner. Because obviously the field is wide open for the Democrats now. But for, people like J.D. Vance, Vice President Vance, it's going to be interesting to see if Trump's policies are more popular this time or not going forward for people like that who might want to run.
Yeah, and with the House and the Senate, there's also, the cabinet members that he's been electing recently that may also help push his agendas in a certain direction. And have we ever seen a cabinet like this with such big names? Like, you know, you have Elon Musk, Pete Hegseth of Fox News, you know, Senator Mark Rubio. We have Elise Stefanik and Matt Gaetz. You know, these big, both political and even non-political names. Is this like something we've seen before in a cabinet?
Well, kind of going on, Matt Gaetz is not going to be confirmed by the Senate. I'm just going to put that out there. He's not going to get the votes for it. The ethics probe was supposed to drop on him, and he will probably lose, even though it's a 53-seat Senate majority. He'll probably get around 45 votes, maybe even 40. But kind of going on a lot of these big names, you know, I think President-elect Trump is doing it because he had promised the people he'll throw Elon Musk in there somewhere. Rubio was kind of more of an establishment pick, you know, to please the Senate, because the Senate confirms, and Secretary of State is a more major position than Secretary of the Interior. But I'm not surprised at all that he's put these names in there because he campaigned on it.
Yeah. I think we've seen, at least in my lifetime, I've never seen a president pick, you know, just these kind of like big flashy names before. But I think it's all a part of the, you know, political game that they're playing. I think that what Trump is trying to do is surround himself with people that he knows are going to make it easier for him to push his agenda. So I think, regardless who that is, I think that's how we, you know, are going to see this thing play out for the next 4 years. I think it's just one of those situations where, you know, kind of like an anomaly in history. You know, I guarantee you, if you had to ask President Washington if someone like President Trump would ever, you know, make it to the presidency, he probably would have thought you were crazy. But, you know, here we are, hundreds of years later, it happened. And, you know, I'm not surprised that, you know, he took somebody, you know, who, like, business people and, you know, a TV commentator and put him in the federal government, you know, you know, because he got there. So if he got there, you know, ain't no telling what's going to happen next. So I think it's just a part of the game that he's trying to play.
I see.
Yeah, I mean, building off of that, I think the game that all the politicians, I think ever since the 60s have been playing is harnessing the role, and we've talked about this a lot in our courses, harnessing the role of the celebrity when it comes to presidential races, particularly when it comes to getting endorsements. I think a key endorsement that JFK got in the 1960 election, or I don't know if it was key, but it was noteworthy because he was a prime celebrity. I believe it was Frank Sinatra. We discussed in class, and that's not something new when it comes to now, but it is definitely an anomaly when we're looking at the cabinet and the role of celebrity within the cabinet. But it's normally coming in the face of sorry, I lost my train of thought for 1 sec. But
okay. No, that's fine. So these appointments that he's made, many have deemed controversial. And what I'm interested in is, have other presidents made controversial appointments to their cabinets, or have they been controversial in the same way? Because I feel like a lot of people think that these have been controversial because the people that he's appointed may not entirely be fit for the job that they're being appointed for.
Yeah, I mean, it's not entirely new. Looking at the same example, looking at JFK, he appointed his brother, Robert Kennedy, to Attorney General, which a lot of people it's easy to look at that and say, this is a clear example of nepotism, or is he actually qualified? So it's not something new, but I think with the scale that it's at under Trump's cabinet currently, it is raising a few eyebrows.
Also, to add on to that, I think it's, like I said, a part of the game. You know, you kind of have to do what you have to do to make it. I think about when he mentioned Bobby Kennedy, I thought about President Lincoln picking Andrew Johnson. You know, the country was in the midst of the Civil War, so Lincoln needed to pick somebody that he could work with, and Johnson was specifically a political pick. You know, like many people don't know, Andrew Johnson and Lincoln didn't like each other. You know, they were from two different parts of the country. I mean, they were both, you know, born in the South, but, you know, Johnson was from Tennessee, Lincoln was from Illinois, you know, but Johnson was a Union Democrat. And he literally got Johnson just for the express purpose of, you know, getting those votes from the South. He was a political, part of the game.
Yeah.
But and I guarantee you that it was done specifically to make sure that the war got over with quicker. Because think about it, if you want anybody to help you negotiate the end of a war, you're going to want somebody who's probably pretty close to the enemy. And Johnson, was a Southerner, so it was very strategic, and a lot of Republicans did not like that in Lincoln's government. They did not care for the fact that he had picked Johnson as his VP. But I think, like I said, it just goes back to them playing the political game. But also, it's kind of like what he mentioned when he mentioned, Kennedy getting Frank Sinatra and Harry Belafonte support. I also think about presidents picking celebrities to be ambassadors. It's a very common thing. Like, many people don't know, Shirley Temple was a U.S. ambassador for years. So like, presidents do that kind of stuff all the time, and Frederick Douglass was I believe the United States' first ambassador to Haiti. The president has always done that, use people with good appeal that help him further his mission or his agendas in the office. So I think that's all a part of the grand scheme that we're looking at here.
Yeah. Jacob?
I'd agree with that because, you kind of look at it too. America's the land of immigration.
Right.
And we have people that come over from everywhere, tennis players who come here that are the best in Germany that come here. So for them to be an ambassador to Germany, where they already speak the language, there helps with tensions, for one, because you got to speak the language, and two, they know the groundwork of, the people over there better. So when it comes to ambassadors, I think it's wonderful. Now, in terms of are they controversial for President Trump's cabinet, I think we'll have to tell. There were some people with President Biden's that were controversial. Merrick Garland was a big one with the Supreme Court, and then what he's done kind of with the DOJ. But I think, I just think it kind of depends. There's going to be good guys and bad guys in every single administration. You see good guys and bad guys on American grade. Doesn't mean that all businessmen are bad. So kind of same with the political landscape.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you, Jack, Nation, Jacob. That's all the time we have today. And thank you for being here with us. And thanks for watching. See you next time on Watching Washington.